Addiction has a way of leaving people feeling like their story's over, there may not be hope, but sometimes the road to recovery starts in the most unexpected places.
Well, in Colorado Springs, one group of men is finding healing on a softball field. They call themselves Recovery Rebels, a team built on faith, brotherhood, and second chances. And for many of these players, the game is far more than just softball.
In Colorado Springs, a unique softball team is stepping up to the plate, not just to win games, but to transform lives.
I'm over 9 years sober at this point, and without any of this, none of that's possible. You know, I give all the glory to God.
The connections that we build with people, especially for folks who are trying to figure out what their life looks like after addiction, I think is really important, because when you shift into a healthier lifestyle, you have to rebuild everything, not just yourself.
Meet Recovery Rebels. Founded in 2020 by Rob Decker, personal trainer and addiction recovery coach.
I want to see people change their identity and what they attach themselves to. That's the goal, meeting people where they're at and bringing the light of Christ to them so that they can start to change their identity.
Rob is also a baseball enthusiast who had his own battle with addiction. It started when he was 14 and lasted 20 years.
Baseball for me was my first love. I played up into high school, but the problem was I got to a place as a teenager into drugs and alcohol that there was no way I was getting good grades. And my parents weren't home, they were divorced, like there was complete chaos in my house. You know, baseball was a pipe dream at that point, because at this point it was just survival. That's what it was for me, and just trying to get by and numb myself.
Once, he even tried to end his life by diving out a third-story window.
So I clipped an awning. The awning changed my fall a bit, and I ended up hitting concrete, severing my L2, my spine, broke both my arms, and collapsed my lung.
Even then, Rob would hang on to his addictions another 4.5 years, until the day he surrendered his life to God at the age of 34.
Well, there was a lot of brokenness that was inside of me that I wasn't handing over to the Lord. I saw how he was patient and loving with me. He gave me the clarity and the strength to walk through all of it, you know, knowing that he was always there for me, and I had to stop throwing my life away.
Years later, Rob found his way back to the Diamond, playing recreational softball, where he met guys working through similar things he did.
I had some friends here in Colorado Springs that were struggling with drug, alcohol addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder. They were internalizing a lot of things. I developed some deep, intimate relationships with them, and they were both ex-baseball players.
It was then Rob found a way to turn his pain into a purpose. He formed Recovery Rebels, a softball team that would help others find healing and ultimately a relationship with Jesus.
The end game is to heal, right? And so we have to create those safe spaces where people can start trusting again. People struggle, they have trauma, they have brokenness, and they're running to substances and alcohol. And so, you know, we want to change the conversation, we want to change the narrative, but also too, I come from a camp of, you know, who the Son sets free is free indeed.
The response? Overwhelming.
The only reason why we're here and breathing and able to play this game is because of Jesus. So we praise Jesus, and thankfully we're still here doing it and alive. A lot of us shouldn't be alive at this point.
I think that the military team is such a good outlet for guys that may be dealing with some issues, like mental health issues. This is a brotherhood that we can all be there for each other and recover from any mental health struggle that they might be dealing with.
For Rob, this is about shining a light in the darkness, showing the broken that they're not alone. It's a mission he feels Christ called him to.
Love comes from human connection. That's how the Lord created us, was for us to connect with each other, to love each other, to support each other, to lift each other up, to encourage each other.
The players and coaches aren't the only ones being affected. After every game, both teams meet at the pitcher's mound for prayer, which opens the door to deeper conversations.
You have that guy saying, hey man, I do think I have a problem with this, or I'm struggling with this, and we're like, hey, here's some resources. We have tons of resources with Rob and Derek, and all those guys just have so much to, you know, to offer somebody to give them a place to go.
we're wired to have human connection. And so it's important to have like minds around you. You know, if you fall down, like there's less judgment from people who've been through similar things. It's easier to get help, seek help, and also you got all these like bodies around you to help you.
To the folks in Colorado Springs, Recovery Rebels are more than a softball team. They're a family, a lifeline, and a testament to the power of faith, community, and second chances. They're rewriting the playbook for recovery, one game, one prayer, one life at a time.
And I just want to shine the light on those that are struggling with their mental health and their spiritual well-being, right? I just want people to see hope, and at the end of the day, it all points to Jesus, because he is our hope.
Ashley, you said yesterday on the show how important it is to have people around you to support you as we're in certain seasons of our life.
Yeah.
And Rob said, and early in his life, he didn't hand over his brokenness, and he paid a price for it. And like you said yesterday, when you're around people and support each other, great things can happen.
Absolutely. Listen, I love a good softball game as well. Growing up, I played softball. I went all the way up to JV, and then I did intramural softball. There is something about also playing a team sport that teaches you amazing life lessons, but also I would imagine if you are somebody who's struggling, has struggled with addiction, you're in recovery, you definitely need people, like-minded individuals, especially if you're a Christian, so other believers that can uplift you, pour into you when you're feeling down, and vice versa too.
When guys can say, call me when you want to go get that drink or when you're looking for a hit at something, like I'll walk through this with you, the shame factor goes away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that brotherhood is amazing. And yeah, God can really do great things when we use our pain, as Rob said, we use our pain to help bless other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Addiction touches millions of families, but many loved ones are left wondering how to help without making things worse. Author and recovery advocate Caroline Beidler says recovery isn't just about one person. It can become a journey of healing for the entire family. And she joins us now to talk about her new book, When You Love Someone in Recovery, and how families can move from fear and confusion to hope and support. Caroline Beidler, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm just delighted to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to chat with you about all the things recovery and supporting families. But first question I have for you is you obviously talk a lot about addiction and recovery, both from a professional standpoint, but also a personal perspective as well. Are you able to just share a little bit of your own journey with addiction and recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey struggling with addiction started really young. I was just a girl, about 11 years old, when I started drinking, and that spiraled really quickly into drug use. And I think of it as this cycle of substance use and then trauma that I experienced. So starting using substances really early to help kind of address some of that pain that I was going through as a child and some really hard things I'd been through. And then continuing to use substances and then experiencing some really hard things that just, it was like a snowball and it kept spiraling. And I think, you know, one thing I always like to share is that I wasn't a Christian either and didn't grow up in a Christian home. And so I just felt untethered. I felt like I didn't have a foundation, and I struggled for so many years with my addiction.
Well, what did your recovery look like? When did you finally break free of that addiction?
Yeah, so it was an incredible time for me in my 20s. You know, I was still struggling a little bit, but a friend of mine introduced me to Jesus and to the church, and I started this process of not only recovery from addiction, but also faith and spiritual formation. And so for me, those two things go hand in hand, and it's been an incredible journey ever since. I've really come to understand that recovery is about so much more than sobriety or stopping something. For me, it's about learning how to be someone new, how to live out that calling of that we are new creations in Christ. And so it's just been an exciting experience for me, and I just can't stop talking about it. It's why I wrote my book. I do a lot of advocacy. I'm a managing editor for recovery.com. So I do a lot of things now, all centered on sharing this message of hope with other people who are struggling and their families.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Well, again, your book is called When You Love Someone in Recovery. Why did you want to write a book specifically for families and loved ones who have somebody in their family, a loved one that might be struggling with addiction and then moving into recovery?
Well, Great question. And with my professional experience working in the field, working with a lot of women and families, I started seeing and hearing this over and over, that we have a lot of addiction recovery stories. We have our stories, but what's missing is the family story. And what's missing is practical help and a guide, information that we can use to share with families to help them understand what recovery is all about. Because there's a lot of misconceptions, and a lot of families, including my own husband, thought that recovery was just about going to meetings, going to meetings in secretive church basements, and that it isn't a way of life that brings health and healing. And so addressing those misconceptions and helping families understand that is a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, many families feel like they're walking on eggshells around someone in recovery or struggling with addiction. Maybe can you tell us what are some of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to help their loved ones?
Yeah, I think, loving someone in or seeking recovery, it can be hard. It can be confusing. And, your loved one may have hurt you. It may be hard to trust them. I think one of the best things to remember is that families can choose to lead with love and compassion. So we might still carry a lot of that hurt and fear, but we need to still show up for those that we love. And so even small actions like helping meet basic needs. I remember when I was struggling as a teen, my dad would take me grocery shopping. Just him showing up and meeting my basic need of being hungry, I still think about that. And that was such an impactful time for me. Another thing that families really need to keep in mind is that terms like enabling, tough love, and even codependency, I think, have been used to harm families. I'm not saying there isn't truth in some of those terms, but as family members, and I'm affected family member too, we carry a lot of shame and guilt and just this heaviness, this weight of how do we show up. And I think God is calling us to let that weight go. His burden is light. And so we can choose love. And when it's hard for us to love, we can lean on God's help, and we can lean on community. We can lean on our church families to help us show up and love that person when it's hard. So definitely choosing love first and meeting those basic needs. And then another thing I always remind families is be ready with options for support when your family member says, I need help. Recovery.com is a great resource for that, where you can look for different options. You can connect directly with someone that can offer support. So I always share with families about that resource as well.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, in the book, you describe 4 pillars of recovery: hope, wellness, community, and service. Why are those so essential?
Yeah. So, I said earlier, recovery is about so much more than sobriety. And I think today when we hear the word recovery, we might just think abstinence. We might think some of these social media trends like Sober October and Dry January, which are great, and I love them so much. But recovery is about so much more. And so it's about having hope for our loved ones. And it's about learning that we have a hope and we can hope in our futures. And it's about being of service to our communities. It's about understanding the purpose and plan that God has for us. And it's about more than just sobriety in that physical wellness. Mental wellness and spiritual wellness is a part of the journey as well. And I talk a lot more about each of those areas in my new book.
Yeah, it's definitely a holistic approach. Yeah, that's powerful. Well, you also talk about the importance of setting healthy boundaries. How can families support someone without enabling destructive behavior? And let's be honest, I think setting healthy boundaries can be difficult for loved ones.
It is. And I think that's one of the hardest questions and the hardest things for families because, as I mentioned before, some of these terms like enabling and tough love have been told families, be careful or you might enable or you might cause them to use or, a lot of this really confusing information that really goes against our hearts as parents and friends and brothers and sisters. And so when we talk about boundaries, I love to say that boundaries are brave, that we can set boundaries and still take loving action. So for example, setting a boundary doesn't mean not picking up your phone when your loved one calls or not letting them come into the home for holiday dinners. I've heard mothers talk about just being tortured by some of the guidance that they've received to set these really harmful boundaries. But what it does mean is that we can, like my dad, take me grocery shopping, but not give me cash, for example. And some of these other things that you can still show up and love and care for your person that might be struggling, but you can do so in a way that is helpful to them.
Yeah, I love that you're all about a more compassionate approach as well. Well, last question. I wish we had more time, Caroline, but finally, for families who feel exhausted or hopeless right now, what message of hope would you want them to hear?
I would just remind them that they're not alone. I think for a lot of years, families felt like addiction wasn't normal, that it was something that was just happening to them or that they were the only ones. And research shows us today that addiction impacts almost every family in some way. So you are not alone. It's okay to reach out for help. And our faith communities are a great place to do that. There's a lot of wonderful recovery ministries, Celebrate Recovery, Life Recovery, Regenerate Recovery, that provide support not just for the person struggling with substance use, but for families too. So I'd say you're not alone, and please reach out for help.
Caroline, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your book, and thank you for your mission. I do believe it's helping many, many individuals and families. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, Caroline Beidler's new book, When You Love Someone in Recovery, releases April 7th. So make sure you get yourself or a loved one a copy. You can also go ahead to her website, carolinebeidler.com, for more useful tools and information. Andrew?
Yvette brought stability to Gerald's life. He seemed to bring chaos to hers. The two believed God brought them both together. But sometimes she wondered, God, are you sure?
I honestly was mad at God. I'm thinking, God, I know your voice. I know what you said. And I kept saying, God, you have to have something better for me. Like, why would you ask me to marry him with all the things that we were going through?
Yvette and Gerald were best friends in high school. Gerald says she was a bright light in his world of mental chaos and darkness.
God had used her to literally be a lifesaver to me. I grew up with loneliness, rejection, abandonment, depression, suicidal thoughts, all mental stuff. When I became friends with her and we became real good friends, those thoughts went away.
The two lost touch when Yvette went off to college. Then, more than 10 years later, they reconnected over a phone call that quickly blossomed into a relationship.
My whole life had been in disarray since she left. And now to hear her voice again, oh, that was beautiful. That was just beautiful. I wasn't letting that go.
We had known each other forever, went our separate ways, did a lot of things, and decided this was God. We really felt like it was God bringing us back together.
They were married within 6 months. Yvette believed God had a calling on Gerald's life to be a worldwide Christian leader. But after a few years of marriage and ministry together, it came out that Gerald was leading a secret life.
I'm a counselor, I'm a pastor, his best friend, and he did a really good job of really hiding a lot. So I did not know the pornography addiction. I did not know about the drinking. I did not know about the drugs.
The alcohol, the drugs, all of those things, the deceptions, the lies, the cheating, all of this stuff started to unravel.
I almost felt like I was duped into this situation. So I was frustrated with God. I was frustrated with him. We had some really traumatic and difficult conversations, and they just weren't godly. I did not forgive. I did not let things go.
I didn't know how to cope with responsibility. I didn't want to be accountable. I couldn't be a good husband. I couldn't be a good father. I couldn't even be a good person. And so I was just leave.
They separated several times. Each time they reconciled, their relationship became more toxic. Then, Yvette felt God lead her to a new understanding of herself, Gerald, and marriage.
I needed to learn how God created me. And at that point, he told me, I literally created Eve for Adam, to fix what he was missing, to give him the help that he needs. And he just kept saying, whatever he is missing, I put it in you. I knew what he was gonna need when I created you. I changed everything because I realized I had resources, I had the word, I had a relationship with God. I knew that I had what it really would take to fight the enemy.
For 2 years, Gerald lived on the streets. When he finally hit rock bottom and asked to come home, Yvette, still believing in Gerald's calling, was ready for his return.
When I walked back into the house, all I smelt was an aroma of peace. She was like, "Hi, how are you? You want something to eat?" I'm like, yeah, something ain't right. This woman about to kill me. Something. I don't know about all of this. So how is this gonna work?
I was looking at a person who is homeless, on drugs, dealing with perversion, just not what you would think you would be looking at when God says a worldwide leader, you know, those kinds of things. So it was challenging, it was tough, but I had to believe God more than what I was seeing.
God saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, but he allowed my wife to start to cultivate the very thing that he saw.
It caused us to fast, to pray, to seek God in ways I didn't even realize were available. And what he did was he said, I can strengthen you to sanctify him if you let me.
Gerald was soon delivered and spiritually restored, thankful for a wife who believed in his calling even he didn't see.
I now sit before you and being able to give this testimony of what God actually can do when someone is standing in the gap, when someone is actually interceding, when someone is going to literally say, I'm going to give my life over as a living sacrifice because I see what God sees.
Together, they experienced the blessings of trusting what God told Yvette so many years ago. They now have an international ministry, helping couples experience the power of God in marriage, encouraging all to believe God for what seems impossible.
Pain along the journey does not even compare to the joy. We are literally best friends again, and that has been amazing. Our children have all been reconciled back to their dad. We have a great time. We enjoy what we do. We fight together, and so we see a lot of answered prayers.
God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask or think. He specializes in the impossible.
I've seen God transform someone in front of my eyes. What that has done for my faith is incredible. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, that will give you hope. If you're in a marriage that is struggling, that will give you hope. And Ashley, I know Gerald is very thankful for Yvette's grace and forgiveness and how she sought the counsel of the Lord instead of just saying, I'm out. I'm out of here.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, she had to, operate in forgiveness as well. And I think it is truly a miracle that she's able to, I thought it was so sweet. She's like, we are best friends again. They're singing, they're dancing, they're in ministry together. Like, that's what marriage is all about. I mean, obviously, I'm not the one that's married. You are, Andrew. But I feel that, marriage, it's supposed to have a kingdom purpose. And they definitely have a kingdom purpose.
Well, I can tell you in being married, you cannot look to your spouse to fulfill all the emotional needs you have.
Yeah.
They cannot do it. Your spouse cannot meet every emotional need, every way to make you feel valued, and it's not their job either.
Yeah, that's so
You got to pursue the Lord for that.
Amen.
But God can love your spouse through you.
Yeah.
He can love my wife through me and vice versa. And you're right. Marriage is supposed to be kingdom-based.
Yeah.
It's three.
That foundation.
Yeah. And that just, if you're in a marriage that is struggling, I hope that story will minister to you. We want to leave you with this promise from Joel chapter 2, verse 25. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. And of course, if you need prayer for anything for your marriage, for yourself, give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. We thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.